And after that moment, I think I really thought about that. I thought, maybe there's more to what I'm doing than I realize. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's not just about the films I'm making and what I think is important in my life. But I think this is where the nature of purpose is. It's like, it's weird. It's not, you don't always know it's there. And I think that's where we struggle a lot as people. We always think we need to know. And if I don't know it, then it's not there and it's not real. And it's like, well, it still is there and it still is real. It just, sometimes it's not as obvious.
This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte.
Identifying your blocks and demystifying your struggles
so that you can claim your own path
and make your life a work of art.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's been a while for Evan and I. We actually took a little break. Evan has some news to share with you all, and I will leave it to him to do that. But it's big, profound kind of news, I guess, life-changing stuff, Anyway, so we had a good little discussion about what we're going to get into today, and we decided to call this one The Great Expanse of Your Nature. And I'm pretty excited to talk about this because it's one of those things. It's like, it's kind of that part of the creativity and the art and of life that you don't really see and you're not always thinking about, and maybe you never even realize is there. And it's quite fascinating and quite cool to begin to recognize this part of your existence and your and you and how you play a part in like almost this holistic thing that we're all really kind of participating in humanity and life and creativity. I mean, that sounds very big, but I mean, this is kind of a big thing because it's that unconscious, involuntary part of you that's still participating and you don't even realize you're participating. And it's absolutely magic. It's absolutely wonderful. And I do actually think it serves you to begin to see how you're actually more connected to everything than you realize. So I know I'm kind of being cryptic, but it's one of those things that I think we'll dive down some rabbit holes and figure out. But what do you got to say, Evan, for this one?
Yeah. No, I like you built up a kind of like a sense of mystery around a lot of this. And not that there's anything necessarily totally mysterious about it, but there's just a lot of interesting territories to go with this one. And I think that I will maybe just set things up a little bit more by saying that how we kind of arrived to this title, this subject, the expanse, the great expanse of your nature, is, we started talking about purpose. And for anybody who's been, a long-time listener of the show, you've probably heard us talk about purpose a lot. And you will probably hear us talk about it again, because purpose is in the scope of human beings and living our lives. Purpose is a big thing. It's a big thing. How many people have written books about it? How many YouTube videos get recommended to you? They're just like about finding your purpose, doing your purpose, all this stuff. And nothing against that whatsoever. But I often find that it's something that there's a lot of people don't, in my opinion, dive deep enough on this whole thing of purpose. And I think we've done that a lot in terms of like some of the traps with even the word of purpose and our sort of obsession with it as well. I've very much over recent years preferred to, if I'm going to say anything about it, say it's a calling. Like, what about calling? There's just something a bit more organic and dynamic about thinking about it in those terms as opposed to purpose. And for this conversation, we changed that once again to something of nature. And there's a lot more to it than that, but I think that nature is a really kind of a great way for us to recharacterize the word purpose. Right. And so I'm excited to get into that and to explore how looking at it as sort of nature and our own nature, and how that fits in with everything,
Mm-hmm.
with how our nature fits in with life itself. And so yeah, I'm excited to get into that. And also I'll just, what you said, because I'm like, what's the big news? I had a kid. I had my first kid, and he came early. He came 6 weeks early. It was a very dramatic and unexpected event. And thankfully everyone is good. My wife is good. Everyone is healthy and doing well. So yeah, that was living out of, like, in a hospital basically for 2.5 weeks, which isn't the best of situations, but I think there'll be some interesting conversations to have around that, because we've also talked a lot about the plans that we have,
Mm.
and on this podcast. And this was certainly a situation where every single fucking plan being completely thrown out the window. Like, it's gone. It's been obliterated. It's been destroyed and shat on the ground. That's your plan. So, and there's been a lot of really wonderful and beautiful things that have come from that, that have definitely changed me. But we'll talk about that, I think, in another podcast. Let's dive into this one. So Brandon, where do you want to start things off with?
Well, Evan, I think everything's connected. And I think this whole thing with the situation with your new child and the way all that played out is somehow still connected to even what we're talking about now. And I do think there are parallels we can draw into it. But for one, like, we've talked a lot about things not going to plan, and how, you deal with plan, and then you have a plan and you think your plan, and then all of a sudden things go sideways, and then you deal with that and you respond and whatever. But I do often find that a lot of the time the best things in your life come in a way that's not really planned. It's like they come almost out of nowhere. And when you start to see the connectedness of it all, you start to see that they almost aren't out of nowhere. They're almost perfectly, like, weirdly divinely timed in this kind of wonderful thing. And you, at the time, you're just like in the chaos of things not going to plan. And then it isn't until later, maybe, if you can have a moment to reflect on it, that you go, it's kind of wonderful it played out that way. I was thinking about something in my life that had happened where a relationship fell apart at a certain time in my life. And I was just thinking about it, and I was going, I was in the chaos at the time when it fell apart, but then I was thinking about, well, what would have happened had it gone the way I thought it should have gone? And how might have things played out in other areas of my life? Because those areas are still very connected, and they were dramatically connected to this relationship, because this relationship was such a pinnacle part of my life at that point. And I was thinking, I'm like, that seemed like kind of hell and terrible, but it actually was so wonderful that it kind of fell apart at the time that it did, in the way that it did, because that also opened up other possibilities and other opportunities and things that, and also I think it avoided me from other challenges that, I know I would have entered had it not happened. I know I'm being somewhat still cryptic here as I'm talking about that, but I don't think the details matter. I think the thing is that one of the things that interests me about this conversation is that things are at play and things are at work that you have no idea about. They're not in your conscious awareness. You don't understand, and you're not even aware of the cause and effect and impacts they're having on the fabric of everything that is what your future is walking into. And so it's kind of like, I think we get hyper focused on something. We think, this is what I'm doing. This is the point. This is the way, this is the thing, this is the reason. And then when the plan gets wiped out, so does this hyper focus we had. And that is tough to deal with. But because the hyperfocus gets worn out or washed away, or however you want to look at it, you begin to see something, you open up to the potential of what might have been there that you were not paying attention to because you were too hyper-focused. And I mean, I have that analogy. I mean, maybe we'll bring this in a little bit about the tree and the leaf and all of that stuff. But I think, just to give, let me just do it now, because people are going, what the hell is he talking about?
The tree and the leaf?
The tree and the leaf. All right, everybody, you ready for the tree and the leaf story? Sit down, kids. I'm going to tell you the tree and the leaf. Okay. No, but it's like, I teach a screenwriting course. And when you're writing a screenplay, it's like a tree that's creating a leaf, and you're trying to create this perfect leaf, and you're trying to do this thing, and you're just thinking about how amazing it would be if you could just get this like perfect leaf. And you don't realize that you're the tree that's producing the leaf. You're so hyper focused on the leaf, and you don't realize that in the pursuit of not only creating the leaf, you built yourself, and you're doing not only stuff that's helping you, but it's helping every tree around you. It's doing so much wonderful things. And also it's giving you the ability to continually put out more leaves. And I mean, we can go down this rabbit hole further, Evan, and maybe I'll let you expand upon the idea. But my point is the hyper focus is the leaf. And you get so worked up about the leaf, and maybe the leaf isn't perfect. Maybe it's faulty. Maybe something's wrong with it. Maybe bugs come and eat it before you could ever get it done. And you're like, oh my God. But you're still the tree that was producing the leaf. And I think we often forget about all the benefits that came out of the work that was producing the leaf, and the things that came out of that. Even though it maybe didn't go as we planned, it didn't go perfectly, there was wonderful other things that were happening that we weren't looking at while we were in the midst of doing this thing. And so I think that's kind of where the nature comes into this, where it's like, there's more to your purpose than you even realize. Like, it's not just this thing you're thinking about and looking at. You're actually having an impact, and there's a point to you in a way that you probably would have a difficult time even fathoming if you could understand it. But there's so much more at play than you even realize. And just because your attention isn't on it doesn't mean it doesn't count and doesn't matter.
Yeah, and that it's not happening.
Yes.
Yeah, that was like kind of another thing that we were toying around with in terms of like, oh, what are we going to call this one, right? Like, and one of the things we tossed around was purpose is, your purpose is inherently happening in some level. We'd ultimately decided not to go with that, but yeah, to just jump onto your analogy there on the tree and the leaf, it's like it's in this sort of pursuit of things, I suppose, but there's all of these other things that the tree is doing. It's like it's trying to produce these perfect leaves, and you could argue that the tree is trying to produce the most perfect of all of its leaves, right? It's trying to, like, all of the ones that are coming out, it's trying to create a perfect leaf, and in doing so creates these huge canopies of this, incredible greens and reds and all, and whatever colors that it does. And there's something else I want to say about this, but first off, I want to say, it's like, well, those leaves are providing the tree with the capacity to absorb more sunlight, for the tree to grow, for the core of the tree to grow, for the roots to grow even deeper. Those leaves eventually fall. They put carbon into the soil. They enrich the soil. The tree provides homes for all kinds of other wildlife to exist. It creates shelters for all kinds of other wildlife. There's other plants that they can only grow in shaded areas, so they find their home underneath these big trees. Like, there's so much that is going on, the whole sort of harmoniousness of nature, and all of these incredibly complex things that are happening. Although not to get too far into this, but as our good friend Alan Watts would say, it's like, it's only complex because our language makes it so. It's actually a very simple process, right? Like, and as he would say, it's like, well, how do you beat your heart? Right? How do you do that? You don't know. Like, yeah, we can break it down, we can dissect it into pieces, but that's really not exactly how it's happening either. And how do you do it? You just do it. How does nature do this? It just does. How does the earth trees and the earth shrubs and the earth, does all of these different things. So I feel like I'm getting a little bit into the woods now. Pun totally intended on that one. But there's this nature that exists that is so far-reaching and does so many different things. And anyone can disagree with me, but I believe that we are that very one and same nature. We come from nature. We have a nature within us. And as human beings, we just have, the ability for us to reflect on it is part of our nature as well. But I think that this whole thing of purpose and stuff and getting hung up on that whole thing is very often creates a confusion. And as we've talked about, part of that, I think, comes down to the fact that when we get hung up on purpose, we can get too static with it, not understanding that this is a dynamic thing that is going on, and it's a relational thing that is going on. Your purpose is not just something that just, that's it and it stays and it's precisely that. It's something that grows and evolves based on your life and your experiences and who you're interacting with and who else comes into your world. And there are things that are also going on that, as you were saying, like, you don't even necessarily understand all of the impacts of what you're doing and how many people that is touching. Like, to bring that into the artist realm, like, how many of us have been so touched, so deeply affected by an artist, by a movie, a performance, a song. Most of us can think of something that came out of the arts, that from some artist that was or is still very important to us in our lives. And most likely that artist has absolutely no fucking idea. They were trying to write a great song. They were trying to just make a great movie that they cared about, that meant something, that actually said something that was meaningful to them. And through that process, right, which was in many ways those people living according to their nature as best they could, and the things that creates by living through that nature as best you can, it has these impacts. It reaches us. It reaches into our hearts and souls, and we say, like, wow, that changed me. That thing that you did, that touched me and it changed me. And that person doesn't know who you are, right? Yeah. They don't know the way in which it changed you or the way in which it touched you, but it did, right? And they couldn't have possibly intended for that to happen, right? They were just naturing.
Oh, I love that. I mean, that's one of the things I think purpose is such an interesting thing in the sense that when you think you have it, you're so far off from it that, to realize that would almost be deflating. But the thing is like, I think that there is something valuable about thinking you know what your purpose is, where it's like, I'm doing this because of this reason, and this is what I'm trying to do. Okay, great. Like, that works for you for the time being because it's giving you the motivation, the passion, the interest, the desire or whatever to do whatever you're trying to do. But you don't realize that as you're going about that, you're actually doing some other things that you probably don't even realize. And they're actually even more important and more valuable than the thing you're trying to do, but not necessarily in a way that you always realize. I can share a couple stories where this kind of played a part. One is, I remember I was at a golf tournament and I was 12, I don't know, 13. I was a kid. I don't know. I was like young. It might have even been younger. And anyway, there was this one kid and he was bullying me. And I had to be at this golf tournament for like a week. It was like a school tournament golf thing, right? Anyway, I was there and this one kid was just razzing me all the time, bullying me. He was just kind of a mean kid. And then he started to kind of enroll the other kids into bullying me and whatever. And there was these two brothers. I remember we went to, what are they called? Titleist. We went to the Titleist golf shop and we got to see how the clubs were made and all that stuff. It was kind of a cool day. Then we get out into the parking lot after this was done. And this kid is bullying me again. And he's got a bunch of other kids around him. He's just picking on me. And these two brothers, I remember they came by and they said, "Hey, cut that out, man. You're better than that." And they stopped. And that moved me profoundly. Because after that happened, the way that felt, that someone stood up for me, that someone reached out, and he did it in a way where it wasn't even threatening. It was just like, be better as a human being. And I remember I walked away with that. And like, I think you know this about me, Evan, and I think other people have noticed this about me, but I'm like that with people. I stand up for people and I push people to be better. And when people are being shitty, I will call them out and I'll say like, be better, and I've done it a few times. There's been a few times that, and you just don't realize the impact that these events have on you. I remember I was walking with two of my girlfriends down the street, and we were on Granville, which is like a clubby party type of thing, and I was only in my early 20s, and we weren't dating or anything, but like the girls were like, "Oh, arm in arm with Brandon." So I'm walking down the street with these two very beautiful girls, and these two guys come up behind us and they're like saying all this bullshit, like saying like sexist shit. They're saying stuff to me, whatever. This goes on for a few moments. And I turned around and I forget what I said at this moment, but I said like, "Hey, bug off, get a life," or something like that. And they both just shut up. And the girls felt safe and I felt better, but it was like, it wasn't like a threatening thing. I did it in the way that kid did it for me. Where I said like, just be better. Don't be these fucking losers. You know what I mean? And these guys were bigger than me. They could have beat me up. They could have done whatever they wanted, but there's something about it. And like, these kids probably don't even realize the impact that they had on my life that transferred and transcended into this next situation. And I don't know the impact that I had on those girls that were with me or the guys that were on the street or anybody who might have witnessed that. I don't know. And this is the thing about purpose is like, you are leafing out wonderful things all the time. And sometimes you're leafing out horrible shit and people are calling you out on it. You know what I mean? But like, whatever it is. And there's something wonderful about it. It's all creating something. And I'll share one last story just to hammer this home. I was at the gym. I remember this moment quite vividly where I was at the gym and I'm just working out and lifting some weights and doing my thing. And this girl came up to me and she said, "Hey, Brandon, how's it going?" And I'm like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" Whatever. We hadn't seen each other in a long time. She goes, I just wanted to come up and thank you. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And she's like, "I made my first film." I was like, "Hey, congratulations." She's like, "Yeah, well, I saw you making yours and it just inspired me. And I thought maybe I could do it too. And I went out and I did it. And I just wanted to let you know." And I had no idea. I had never helped her. I had never done anything directly to help her make her film whatsoever. And she just came up and said like, "Hey, thanks for this." And I was like, that really hit me. I was like, shit, me just going out and doing what I want to do is actually somehow impacting other people to do what they want to do. And after that moment, I think I really thought about that. I thought, maybe there's more to what I'm doing than I realize. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's not just about the films I'm making and what I think is important in my life. But I think this is where the nature of purpose is. It's like, it's weird. It's not, you don't always know it's there. And I think that's where we struggle a lot as people. We always think we need to know. And if I don't know it, then it's not there and it's not real. And it's like, well, it still is there and it still is real. It just, sometimes it's not as obvious.
Yeah. Yeah, man, there's lots of wonderful stuff there, Brandon. My God. My God. It's like, I think that, yeah, that it's funny because like I kind of want to move away from the word purpose now,
Sure,
but
yeah.
but I think it was good. It was good that we did just kind of like unpack it a little bit because it's like there can be I suppose a utility to asking questions like, well, what is my purpose? But it's like, to me, I go, what do you care about? Really? Or, I come back to the incredible advice that Joseph Campbell, who we talked about recently on a fairly recent podcast, used to say to all of his students. It was like his one piece of advice, which was follow your bliss. Follow your bliss. And to me, that is very much in lines with this. That's your nature. That's your purpose. It's like that thing is your nature, right? The thing that you care about, the thing that kind of just fulfills something within you in the doing of it. Not for something that it does for you externally, but something that it does for you now, something that it does for you in the doing. And follow that thing, and follow it. I love that he would say that, the use of that word follow isn't, he's not saying, drive after this thing or, shoot or whatever. It's like, no, follow it.
Yeah.
Follow it. It's this thing that you've got to, again, calling, right? Like you've got to kind of listen to it. You've got to pay attention to it, to see where it goes, because it could go in different directions. So just follow it, right? And you're following it because it's your bliss. It's this thing, and that isn't going to always be the same in your life. So like, what is that thing? What is that thing that you care about? And when you do that, when you begin to live your life more in that way, in which that is what is guiding you and directing you in your life, there are these beautiful creative ripples that just go out into the world, that, as you're saying, like, you just don't know how far those things will go, like things that you don't even think about, things that you weren't even trying to do. Like I remember in high school, there was this one kid who was a few years younger than me. And I was in this program where I was a senior, and so they were a couple of years younger, and I was in like a directing and writing. So like I was, instead of acting, I was helping young actors we put up a play, and I was helping to I was directing them in a play and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun. So there's one student I remember who was in this class, and he was kind of a shy, awkward kid, didn't have a ton of friends, but was very, was a sweet kid. And I remember after I had graduated, and I came back to watch, I came back to watch some play like a year or two later or something like that some of the seniors are doing. And so this student was there, and he was a part of it. And he came up to me later, and he said, hey, like, I just wanted you to know that, like, doing that class with you and seeing you act as well in the play that you did in your senior year, he's like, it made me want to keep going and keep doing this thing. And it was just like one of those things that I was acting and doing all this shit because I just loved to do it. You know, like it was just like, I'm having a great fucking time. This is my bliss. This is my, you know, where I feel at home. This is where I'm fulfilled. And it's remarkable at how that gives people permission to do. And I honestly have no idea what he did, how far he pursued acting beyond that. But there's a part of me that knows that it was important. You know, it was important for him to do that for however long he did it for. Because we just have no idea, again, as we've talked about on the show so many times, like sometimes we pursue certain things and they don't necessarily go in the direction that we want or that that we're trying to push them towards, but there's something that it gives us. There's a gift in it. It was there because there was something else we were supposed to be doing, and that was an important step along the way. Right? So there's so much about this, you know, that fits in line with the great expanse of your nature. Like your nature will take you into all these places, not always for reasons that you can fully understand, both for yourself and for others. Mm-hmm. And it's all good, you know, in every sense of the word. Like there's so much goodness that is happening there. I'm going to wrap it up here and send it over back to you, Bran, but it just jumped into my head. My wife's been watching this show, and I can't remember what it's called, but I heard this person say in it, he said, in this life, we're all just walking each other home. And I was just like, oof. That hits me right in the feels. And I think that that's one of maybe the most beautiful things about following our nature, you know, in the expanse of our nature, is that it's like we're all just walking each other home with it. Right. And we all benefit. We all benefit together when we're living that way.
I like that. Wow. Yeah. You know, it's, I think the thing is like you've said this before. You said attention is magic. And I agree with that. I think, you know, what you nurture tends to grow. And I think the mistake that we make at times, and I think everybody does it at some point, but we just put attention into the things that don't matter, and they're not. And maybe you need to, like, maybe that's a part of your growth and your evolution and figuring things out. But I think if you're gonna be conscious about your life and what you're doing, is like, don't give your attention to things that, you know, you don't want to grow, you don't want to you know, manifest more of in your life. And you know, I think sometimes you need to do the wrong thing to realize what it is to do the wrong thing and why the wrong thing is no good. And I think, you know, I don't think that everybody, I don't think everybody really reaches the same level of, say, like wisdom or transcendence of sorts. Like, I think some people, they live their life as a very selfish, small-minded person, almost like a weed that's just, all they do is they strangle other plants. That's their whole thing. And they commit to their victim-y small life world, and they just strangle everything that's good, and they try to get something out of that. And that's how they live. And I don't think they live in a wonderful way, because I think it's a really sucky existence to do that. And no matter how much you get out of a life like that, I think what ends up happening is you end up with this just constant like pain of need and whatever. But I think most people, my guess is that most people don't realize the potential of what they could be, and they just never really express it. So like they somehow buy the narrative of like play it safe and just do what you're told to do, and and all of that. And I think that they live this life, and I forget who the quote is from, but it's something like most men die in quiet desperation. And I think there is some truth to that. I think there's this kind of part of us that's so wonderful and so amazing, and many of us just decide, you know what, I'm not gonna go explore that. I'm gonna do what I need to do. I'm gonna follow the rules. I'm gonna be safe. I'm gonna whatever. And there's a quiet desperation because in your heart, you just know there's like a seed, like inside that seed is some great thing, and it's there, and you talk yourself out of it, and there's the quiet desperation because you're doing it. And if you're hearing that, I mean, I like to bring this up because I think it's important, because I've watched people and I've seen them in their quiet desperation. I've seen it, and to me it's like an unacceptable thing. It's just an unacceptable thing. If you know better, you shouldn't do it. And then I think there are those who go, you know what, I'm going to explore it. And to various degrees, they go and explore what they might be. They pull a vision, they pull a sense of themselves out, and they try to see it go out in the world. And like, you will never know how great you are. Never. Not the greatest person in the world will never know what is fully in them, because there's absolute fucking magic in human beings, like absolutely incredible, unbelievable magic inside of all of us. And we experience maybe a fraction of it in our lifetimes. But just to at least have a taste of it, a taste of the wonder. And I think you get a bit of a taste of the wonder when you start going out and doing the things that really matter to you, and like the things that you follow your bliss, so to speak, right? Because then you end up having these interactions where people come up to you and they say, hey, thank you for doing this thing because it helped me do my thing. And you're like, holy shit, I didn't realize that. But all you were doing was following your bliss, and I also have come to this realization, Evan, that you don't have to be successful. You don't have to be some great, big, wonderful thing in this world. That's not the point. The point is for you just to experience the magic of this existence you get to play a part in. And there's a wonderful nature in it. And I do think you can commit to being a weed that just strangles the life out of all other nature. I do think you can do that. If you want to commit to that and you want to submit to it, maybe you can do that. But I do think also within you, there's an incredible, like amazing, like wonderful rainforest of everything that is you, that is possible too, that can provide nurture and wonder to everything else. And you don't have to go do that. That's the thing. You don't have to go be that, and you don't have to become that, and you don't ever have to let that out of you. You don't have to do it. And so then you just have to ask yourself, would I be open to it? And here's my caveat. Even the weed, as terrible as it is in this analogy, is offering some benefit to everything else, whether it likes it or not. And that's almost the kind of wonderful beauty of our nature, is that even when we're the worst of ourselves, we're somehow helping everything else. We cannot help but provide a nature to every other bit of nature, even when we're working against the nature we're around or trying to consciously. Like, it's just,
yeah,
that's the wonderful part of it all,
Yeah. And having relatively recently done like a permaculture design class, one of the fascinating things is, like, with weeds is it's extraordinary how many weeds are some of the most medicinal plants that you will find. Dandelions are so good for you. and they have so many benefits. It's insane. But I totally, I pick up on what you're saying.
Yeah, well, like, I mean, maybe the dandelion's a good analogy of how even in your victimhood, you can become something important and valuable and great and medicinal and helpful to everything else around you. Like, you just, I think that there is a good nature in our nature. I think there is even when we reject it and deny it, I think there's still something. There's a seed of goodness, there's some service. And like, look, some of my greatest adversaries in life, I think, have made me a much better person. So even if they were trying to destroy me, because I didn't submit to their narrative of being destroyed, I became better. And I think I'm the best I've ever been in my life now. I think, honestly, but I mean, maybe, who knows, whatever. But like, I think that even the people that are working against you, even the people who are jealous, envious, all of that stuff, they're still helping you. And I think you should begin to see that it is all kind of gravy. It is all kind of wonderful,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's in any sort of theatrical production, whether it's on a screen or in front of a live audience, we need a good villain.
Yeah.
If it's not a good villain, like, we actually, it's just like, oh, that was a shit villain. Like, and if the villain is no good, then the story's kind of no good as well. And there's another really fantastic Alan Watts lecture where he talks about that, where it's like, after the curtain comes down and everything, and everyone, all the actors step out to take their bow. If everyone's done a good job, we applaud the hero for having played the great hero, and we applaud the villain for having played the great villain. Because it takes us on this ride, it takes us on this journey, on this experience. And and the thing is too, which is thankfully explored a lot more in sort of the storytelling mediums now, is the complexity of villains now. It's not, I think we talked about this recently.
Yeah.
I can't remember. We've talked about it on a recent podcast. Yeah. Where it's like, the villains, our villains aren't written so much anymore as being like, I'm just megalomaniacal psychopaths who, just want to, who just want to control the whole world kind of a thing. It's just like, no, it's usually these people, like, now it's like they come from somewhere. There's a reason why they are the way they are, though it doesn't excuse their actions, but like we recognize them as being human beings. And in any great story, the villain helps the hero to understand parts of themselves too, right? It helps them to transcend themselves. Very often the hero has to even confront the temptation of siding with the villain. A very real temptation of siding with the villain, and have to confront darkness within themselves, and only to transcend that and to become better human beings. But that's a whole other thing. I suppose that's a whole other thing.
We're opening up some doors.
Yeah.
Well, here, look, like just to kind of like bring this back onto I think the path we're trying to go down.
Yeah.
Which is like when you're off doing something and you think it's your purpose and you think it's your point, you might not realize that you're actually doing a bunch of other things. And those other things that you're not focused on and you don't even notice you're doing are actually more your purpose than the purpose you think you're after. And I think sometimes we struggle because we put too much weight in the ego of purpose. And what I mean by that is, like, the ego needs to know, like, it needs everything to be a conscious, aware decision. Like, you did it, so it happened. And it's like, when you're not in ego, when you're in self or spirit or however you want to call it, it's like you recognize that you're doing things by happy accidents without realizing you're doing them. And so it's without making it egotistical. You don't go like, oh, look, did you see what I did? You're like, wow, that's pretty cool. I ended up doing that. Like, what a wonderful benefit. I was actually just trying to go do this thing over here, and how wonderful that happened. And hey, that gives me a bit of a sense of like purpose in this life, because I didn't even realize I was doing that over there, but how cool. So I'll keep doing this, and like maybe that will keep building more of this over here. So like, hey, great. But maybe that gives me more awareness about what my purpose might be. But you don't even have to know what your real purpose is, but you just need to have a sense of like, well, I'm doing this because of this for me. And that might just be enough. And I think as like, you pointed out, Evan, is like the follow your bliss thing. I think that's kind of a good guiding energy, where it's like, okay, well, I just really love doing this. I'm passionate about it. I care about it. It's fun. And so you follow that bliss, and through following your bliss, you end up doing a lot of good elsewhere. You just don't realize you're doing it, right? And I think also, like, if your bliss is, if you're finding that you're doing something and it's hurting someone else, I mean, maybe check in with how that feels, because maybe you thought you liked doing it, but then you realized it was hurting someone, and maybe you don't like doing it anymore because as much as you might enjoy it, you realize, oh, hey, like this hurts someone. I don't want to hurt somebody. And that's where I think we have a certain kind of correction, but you have to be honest with yourself, because you can just plug your head in the sand and say, well, I'm just going to do it. I don't care. But remember, like, you have to live with all your conscious decisions, right? Even your unconscious ones, but particularly your conscious ones. And if you know better and you do it anyway, I mean, you might get away with it, but you're going to have to live with it. And, so it's okay if you made the mistake, but if you realize, oh, hey, this is actually not good, you might have the mindfulness to be like, hey, wait a minute, maybe I won't keep doing that, because like, yeah, I like it, but it hurts this person. So I don't want to hurt this person, because it's not worth it for me to feel better to hurt this person, kind of thing. Right. And that's, I think that's kind of that's helping you transcend, right? Because you could very well, I talked about how you could become the rainforest essentially, but you could also become a poison forest, right? You could become this amazing thing that just grows into being like very brutal, right? Mm-hmm. And if you want that to become you, by all means, keep going. But if you don't, I mean, maybe recalibrate, correct, and it might be simple. I mean, here's one last thing I'll say about this. It might be simple. Like, for example, maybe you're downloading free videos online, and you're like, well, it doesn't hurt anybody. It's just these companies, right? But then all of a sudden you realize, like, hey, like, you realize the impacts of that, because it does have impacts. And like, but if you looked into it and you maybe saw what it did, you might go, well, I save a few dollars, but I also cause this impact over here. And you might start to go like, do I want to be creating that in the nature of our existence? And that's where your morals and ethics start to come in. And like, you're going to live how you want to live, but just remember, you are the very fabric of nature, and you create the nature you live in. So if you steal, you create the world of theft, right? You are the theft. If you steal, you are not just the theft you had, you are all theft. And that's a hard thing to wrap your head around, but you begin to see that your selfish act is the selfish act of everything else in the world. And if you are unwilling to change it, why would anything else be unwilling to change it? You are the change. You are the seed of change. So you can deny it. You can pretend. You can fake yourself, but you'll face yourself in the mirror at the end of the day, and you'll also face the reality and the nature you built for yourself. So there is no escape. You are your choice. And you can have whatever world you want, heaven or hell, anything you want. And you decide every day, every moment, what are you walking into? Yeah. What are you?
Hey, everybody, this is Evan, and this episode is brought to you by my book. Yes, I recently released a book called The Actor's Awakening, Connecting Spirituality to Craft. Expand yourself as an actor and your craft through a spiritual perspective. Take a journey that will explore universal philosophies and insights to help you understand human nature in a profound way and develop practices to take your work to another level. Again, that's The Actor's Awakening, Connecting Spirituality to Craft, available on Kindle and paperback on Amazon. And as always, if you like the show, please subscribe. Yeah, that's, let's, I feel like everybody, I need to sit with that for a second, think about it, because I'm like, totally, no, like the whole thing of like, yeah, because you are the theft. It's not.
You are it.
It's throwing. Yeah, it's like that crazy. I don't even know what to call it, but yeah, it's that removal of the subject and object, and it's just like, no, there's not you doing the thing that is this. It's you are it. You are the theft.
Yeah.
Like, there's no you doing theft. There's just theft.
Yeah.
And you are it, which is, that's a whole fucking kind of crazy rabbit hole that I'm not necessarily prepared to dive into necessarily, but I just felt like, let's take a second to feel the weight of what Brandon just said.
Man, it's weird when you start to recognize that you actually matter in the world. Because it comes a double-edged sword. Because there's the ego that's like, I'm nothing, I don't matter. It would be irrelevant if I died. There is that part of all of us, right? But then there's that other part of it, like, what if it really does matter? And all the ego goes, yeah, I matter, I'm special, I'm important. But if you matter and you're special and you're important, then everything you do matters and is special and is important. So go fuck yourself when you go do something bad. You can't have it both ways. You cannot be special and have your actions not be special. You cannot have it both ways. It's one or the other. You're either nothing and nothing is nothing and it doesn't matter, or you're everything and you're special and it all matters and it's all special and it all has an impact. So you get to choose. And whenever you choose your nothing, you also experience being nothing. And whenever you realize that, like, if I steal, it's as though everyone else in the world just stole, and you realize that your impact, and you might have a difficult time wrapping your head around this, but that is the level you want to play at. Because if you want to be the rainforest, you better start realizing that you are providing all the life. If you just want to be the weed and pretend that you don't exist at all, by all means, go ahead, but you will have the experience of not existing at all. So what do you want? You can have it one or the other. You don't get both. You don't get to pick and choose.
I don't know.
Disagree? Go with it, Evan. Because disagree might be good. Let's talk about it.
I might disagree with you a little bit on that. I think that we do hold both of those things within us. It makes me think of a Yiddish proverb I heard. Well, I don't know if it's a proverb necessarily, but it was a Yiddish sort of practice that I heard of a long time ago, and it was like, you have two pieces of paper that you write down on each piece of paper, and you put one in your left pocket and one in your right pocket. And in one of them, you write, I come from the dust. And in the other one, you write, I was born from the stars. And it's kind of a thing of like, well, what do you need for what moment? If you're feeling low about yourself at a certain time, you reach into the pocket and you remind yourself that you were born from the stars. And if you're starting to feel a little bit high and mighty on yourself, you reach into the pocket and you remind yourself that you come from the dust. Which is miraculous in itself too, like it's just like there's something, but I'm trying to navigate this thing that you just said, because there's a part of me, I'm like, I agree with you. I hear what you're saying, and it's kind of, maybe it's a matter of convenience, right? Like, sometimes it's convenient for us to act like what we do doesn't matter when it suits kind of our selfishness. And likewise, it can suit our selfishness to act, like we do have this huge and massive impact, right? I think it's a circumstantial thing in terms of, well, how are we acting? How are we behaving? What is the context? What is the situation? What is the moment presenting to us? And what is the most useful for us to be mindful of within those moments, right? Yeah, I don't know. That's my rebuttal. That's my rebuttal.
Well, okay. So, I mean, there's a duality like going on. Well, here's an example. Like, you drive home and you black out, whatever. Maybe you were too drunk or whatever. And you wake up the next morning, you don't know what happened. Then you hear on the news someone got hit by a car. You don't know if you did it, but you might have. Did you play a part in that person getting hit by a car? And the question is, can you see the connection? Because like, it's all connected and everything is connected. And there's a saying I love, which is there's no free lunch. Every time you think you got away with something, you pay for it. It's always, the bill is always on its way. It's either coming right now and you're going to have to pay it up front, or you're in debt to it and you'll find out later what you owe. And either way, if you think, shit, I might have been the person that hit somebody, right? Then you might think the action I took that caused me to potentially do this bad thing, right? Like it's all at play. It's all happening. And you're living with it constantly. So like, for example, those people who cheat on each other in relationships, they think they got away with it, but you didn't get away with it because now you live with the cheat. You live with the cheat, and now you have to pay for the cheat. And the payment for the cheat is you have to pay for the shame, the guilt, the secrecy, the fact that no one can really know, the fact that if people did know, they wouldn't truly love you, they wouldn't truly accept you, and that's your punishment, and that's your bill, and you're going to pay that bill until you figure out how to pay it. And so, sometimes it's not as simple as just tell the truth and like, let's just come out with it and let everyone know what's going on. Sometimes it's not quite that easy. So now you're going to have to deal with that, and you're going to have to live with it, and you're going to have to walk around with it. And that's your punishment. And so every action you take, it comes with something, and you don't always know what that is. And so people are always watching. This is the other thing too. People are always watching, and very rarely do things go unnoticed, and even by you. So, it's a thing of recognizing that you have much more a play in all of this than you're giving yourself credit for. And I think where it becomes a problem is when you put ego into it and you start going like, well, I'm special and that makes me better than you. It's like, no, it doesn't make you better than anything, because even you thinking you're better than someone has a consequence, because now someone's better than you and you're not as good as them. And now you've put yourself in the same position as the person you're better than. So now you're paying for the consequence of that. So everything you do plays. It's all at play. It's all playing a part. And you literally create your heaven or hell. And people who live in hell are paying the debts of the things they will not admit, will not correct, will not be honest about. And they will live those debts out until they pay them off. And so the best thing you can possibly do for yourself in life is clean up your mess and start investing in the things that you think you want. Whether that just be creating things in your life for good art, or building relationships out of honesty, or whatever it might be. but you get to pretend as much as you want that you're as small as you like to be. I just don't think that you actually are. Um, I think the Yiddish thing, because we were talking about that actually in a class I was running this morning, and we were talking about that, and it's like I think where that helps, that Yiddish kind of parable you're talking about, is like to help you be humble, to recognize that you don't need to be special. You don't need to be a big deal. You don't need to be better than anything. You just get to be a part of the dust of everything that is. And it's, and there is, I think, a huge pressure you can put on yourself where it's like, I got to be perfect. I got to be perfect. It's like, look, you're doing the best you can, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to do the comfortable thing and the thing that's not so good, and you're going to pay for it. But like, just take it on the chin and just go, okay, like, I don't want to pay for that anymore. I don't want to eat the shitty food anymore because now I pay for eating the shitty food, and I don't want to do that anymore. So you stop eating the bad food, and you stop, screwing off on the things that matter, and you stop neglecting the relationships you care about, and you just stop doing it. But you often have to mess it up before you realize that you're doing it. And that's okay. It's just like everybody gets a break on that. But nobody gets a break from pretending it isn't happening.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I can't remember who said it, but it was something like, what you do doesn't matter, but it's important that what you do but it's important that whatever you do, it matters, or something like that, or do whatever it is, like it matters. It's like,
do it like it matters.
Yeah, do it like it matters. It's like, look, yes, we can look at some sort of grand scope of things, like, we are, like, the earth is like a speck of dust in the fucking cosmos, it's baffling. We can't even wrap our heads around, how small we are in the scope of the universe. But it doesn't change the fact that, hey, you're here. And we are having this conversation. You on the other end, you are listening to this conversation. You are living a life, and you're aware of that life. And that does mean something. Your life means something in its being, and you are related to everything. Like, you are in a relationship to everything, and it behooves you to act in a way that is in many ways responsible to that, or that is, maybe not responsible is the word, maybe that's not the word I want to use, but it is important that you take care of that, like it matters, because there are other people who, are affected, as we've been saying, in ways that you have no idea that people are being affected for good and for bad. And to kind of bring this back around, this whole thing of relationship, you were talking about how, maybe you're following your bliss, you're doing something you enjoy doing, and then you realize that some part of what you're doing is hurting someone, or it's causing some harm. And, it's worth always just being like, because don't get me wrong, there's a lot of creative people out there who are being shut down for quote unquote harm that they're doing to other people, which is just like, are they though? I'm talking about real harm. And if you come to realize that is you are actually doing that, well, naturally you're going to adjust what you're doing. Because it becomes clear, it becomes evident. It's no longer your bliss anymore with that awareness, if you're carrying that with you. Which is to say that sort of bliss, that thing you're doing, again, is relational. it is completely relational, because it's no longer bliss anymore because of how it relates to somebody else. So you find a different way of doing what you're doing. You can do something better. It doesn't mean that you have to stop doing what you're doing. It usually just means you've got to change something in the way that you're doing something, right? But that's all part of that relationship. And nature, as we've been talking about, is relationship. Nature is nothing but relationship with all things. All things in relationship to each other is nature.
Yeah, I think we've talked a bit about this in previous conversations, where we talked about how it's very difficult to go through life without causing damage in some way. And often when you create something, you also destroy something else. And there is a part of us, like this whole concept of good and bad and right and wrong, those constantly need to be like reevaluated. And a parent, for example, that doesn't want to hurt their kids' feelings might cause their child a lot of damage, because their kid will do the thing that's fun and easy and comfortable and destructive to themselves. But the parent just wants to be their friend and doesn't want to hurt their feelings and all of that stuff. And sometimes being a parent means doing the thing that's going to cause your child not to like you temporarily, because or at least you believe, that it's actually protecting them, taking care of them, and whatever. And so that short-term gain that they're trying to get is, you stopping them from having that is avoiding them long-term pain. So, I think we're constantly in a flux of like short-term gain, long-term pain, short-term pain, long-term gain, and we're navigating those weights all the time. And we're trying to figure out, okay, well, like, when is it okay just to feel good right now and just kind of do the thing? And also, when do I sacrifice and put off and this stuff, right? And like, this is where I think meaning comes in, where you begin to calibrate for yourself, like, what kind of world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a world where it's really easy to deal with your enemies and the people you don't like? Then let's live in a world where we can kill each other, because that's the easiest way to deal with the people you don't like. Just fucking off them. You know what I mean? But we don't want to live in that world. Why don't we want to live in that world? Well, you could be offed. That means you now have to protect yourself. Now we're in a world where our enemies arm up, and we do this, right? And so do you want to live in a world where might is right? Do you want to live in a world where it becomes a matter of there are no code of conduct? There is nothing like this. One of the things that I personally am very concerned about, and I am actively standing against, is let's not celebrate victimhood. I'm just against it. And I have my reasons for that. And people might disagree with me, and that's fine. You can disagree with me all day, but convince me otherwise, because I believe that being a victim is the most, not only destructive thing you can do to yourself, it's the most destructive thing you can do to everyone else around you. It is the weed. The weed is a perpetual victim, perpetually sucking the life out of everything, blaming it for its smallness. And you can live that life if you want, but I won't join you. You can be the weed for fucking eternity. I don't give a shit. I'm not going to join you, because your victimhood of being small and life is hard and things suck, that's your own problem, and you got to work that out. And I'm not going to go with that damage. And I'll give you an example, because I think this is a perfect analogy. I started coaching my friend's daughter's soccer team, and she was embarrassed the other day because her dad's been so supportive, and he's like there for pictures. And I, I'm her coach, right? So I said to her, I said, for me, when I was playing soccer, my dad would never show up to my games. And when he was at my games, he was on his phone the whole time. And all I wanted was for him to see me and notice me and care about what I was doing. And it dawned on me that like we can be a victim of anything. We can be a victim of too much support as much as we can be a victim of neglect. And you can always be the victim. You can always have the, like, I wish it was different. It is what it is. For some reason, like, I worked through my neglect, but I'm not going to go around going like, oh, like I'll never be what I want to be because I was neglected as a child. Like I could do that, but I won't, because it's a destruction of myself. It's a destruction of everything that I am inside. And it was the life I was given, and I was given a life. So I should be grateful for that life, regardless of what it is and regardless of what I was granted. And is there a part of me that is, I don't think it's the right word, but maybe jealous, maybe a little bit envious of her having that love and support. And I see that and I go, man, I wish I had that, because there is a very real part of me that wishes I had that. And it feels very, very unfair. But what am I going to do? Am I going to sit in that unfairness? Am I going to sit there and just like go like, oh, it was so hard for me and whatever? And the thing is like, also, she doesn't know what neglect feels like. And, that's wonderful, but I don't need to go walk around the world with my neglect, bleeding it upon everyone else because it's a wound I haven't healed, And so it's like, no one said you get to come to this life and it gets to just be easy and perfect for you. Life is hard. Life is unfair. It's just a part of how it goes. You know what I mean? But you make what you make of it. And if you want to be a victim, you're going to just find how it's unfair and how it's mean and cruel. And you're going to live in that cruelness and that unfairness. But if you choose a champion mindset, which is what I encourage everyone to do, is just say, you know what? Fuck it. These are the cards I was dealt, and I'm going to win this fucking game with these cards. Whatever that means for you. I was given the worst fucking cards in the game. I wasn't personally, I don't think, but I was given not so great cards, not the best cards, not the cards that are just an automatic winner. And I'm going to make these fucking things work. And I'm going to make something out of this. I'm going to use it to make me better. You know what I mean? And so like your nature comes out when you find the champion. And this is my nature. You're hearing it right now. And you've heard it many times on the podcast if you listened before. This right now, this voice, this person talking is my nature. This champion nature. And fuck you if you ever get in the way of it. Fuck you if you ever try and hurt anything I love. Like, you don't know, but I have to access that, and it's in everybody. And it's a wonderful thing, because if I'm protecting you, you will be so fucking happy I'm on your side. You will love having me on my side, on your side. You know what I mean? I love having me on my side. But if you are my adversary and you are against me and you want to go toe to toe, you better fucking watch out, because there is a line that I have reached that not many people in this world have reached. I've gone to the depths of myself and I've pushed into that, and I know what it's like, and I know what I'll die for. And that makes me a very, very powerful, influential person. And so we all have this in us. And I haven't even tipped the iceberg of what I believe I have access to. But if I'm a victim, all of that is gone. Everything dies. And I just become this little like wimp who was neglected and didn't get the nurture and love that he needed. I had to give myself the nurture. And by giving myself the nurture, I encourage everyone else to give themselves the nurture. It's all there. You get to decide what world you want to live in. You can be the victim or not. And I think like, I'm going on a soapbox here, but like my point is that, look, you get the choice and you can do whatever you want. And I'm not saying that I'm right, but I will argue that it's better than victimhood. Because I've lived both. I've chosen moments of both. And I can tell you that there's very little I know in this life. But if I know one thing, you're designed to grow. You're not here to die. You will die, but you're not here to die. That's not what you're here to do. You're here to grow as big as you fucking can, and then you're going to die. But you grow as big as you can in the meantime. That's your job. And that's a champion mindset. That's not a victim mindset. The victim mindset says, I'm dying the day I was born, and I'm dying and I'm dying and I'm dying. And you focus on how it's all going to be over. And it is going to be over. But in the meantime, let's do something with it, you know? Let's make something of it. And when you die, you become something else anyway. You help everything else in your death. You know, and if your life was just nothing, you don't contribute as much as you could, you know? And I don't know if that matters. I don't know. To me, it does. I don't know if it really matters in the scheme of things anyway. But like, what do you want to make this mean? You know? I mean, you get to make it mean something. I've obviously, everything I've just said is all just shit I've made up. I mean, it's not real. It is just it's my perception. I mean, maybe none of it matters. Maybe I just am here and I die and who gives a shit, but I'm not going to live like that. That's a terrible existence in my opinion. And it is my opinion, but I don't want you to have a terrible existence. And that's why I say it, not because I'm trying to say that I have something you don't. I'm just saying, like, I've tried both sides. Here's my opinion. There you go. Sit with it. Do whatever you want with it. But if you're in pain, I don't want you to be in pain because I project myself into you. And I think that was a hard time. And I don't want that for you, as I didn't want it for me, you know, and maybe that's my gift. I don't know. Like, you don't know. So you just make the best of it. Right. And I think this is, our nature comes out in kind of, I don't know. Let me say one last thing, Evan. If it is divine, like it's not free will, like it's already predetermined that this is what I would be in this life, I still experience my life as though it's free will. So even if this was what is always going to be and was always meant to be, and I didn't really have a choice, I still experience as though I have a choice. So I might as well embrace the choice, because it feels a lot better to embrace it than to just feel at the whim of it. And if, I don't know, like, what do you want to do with it? What do you want to do with your life? You know, you are the seed of growth, so you can be whatever you want, but it's all in you. So whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can, there are moments in our life in which we are victim to things without question. But it's like, are we attaching to that, and are we carrying it around with us in a way that doesn't serve? And, life, as you were saying, life is, unfair, and life is hard at times. But not all the time. That's just one side of the whole spectrum. Life is also beautiful, and life is also extraordinarily generous at times. I mean, there was, I was saying, I've just had my wife and I just had our first child, who came in a way that was very dramatic and very scary, in the way that it happened, and everyone's okay now. But, through everything that happened, even in the scariest moments of it, I experienced such kindness, such extraordinary generosity. I have been loved and taken care of to a level by strangers, to a level that has changed me as a human being. It's changed what I think of, in terms of how I perceive the world. So even in those challenging moments, there is something so extraordinary that can happen if you're paying attention for it. So I just wanted to put that in there too, because it's like, yes, life can be hard. Yes, life can be unfair, but there are times when it gives so much. And I think that it's usually giving while it's also taking. And sometimes it's worth questioning what it is that it's taking. Is what it's taking more than what it's giving. I think when you look hard enough, it's giving a lot more than you think, and the thing that it's taking away is something that you didn't need anyhow.
Well, there's something in that. I mean, I think that this is part of the, okay, so a couple things. One, as I said, the world is unfair. It's cruel at times. Like, yes, it is, but it's also gracious and giving and whatever. Here's the thing. It's just it's not all unfair. It just accept that some of these things just they are. And when you try to make things like, there's an arrogance in that we know what fair is. That's part of the problem, because our interpretation of what is unfair is not always accurate. And so, like, it doesn't matter if you're religious or not. I mean, but like that saying, like, let go and let God kind of thing is almost like kind of perfect. It's like, just let go and let nature, like let things play their role and play their part and do their thing. And don't try to change the things that, like, and if you catch yourself trying to change something that you realize is like actually causing more harm, then stop changing it and just move on. You know what I mean? The other thing I have to say is, like, I talked about victimhood. I'm talking about victimhood in the mentality of victimhood, in the thought process of I'm a victim and you live as a victim. You can be a victim. Someone can do something shitty and you can be a victim of that, and it does not excuse the behavior, and you are a victim in that respect. But the mindset of victimhood is the problem. I had someone attack me when I was a kid, strangled me, and it was traumatizing, and I lived with it for years, and I was so angry and just rage angry, like, and I just carried it as a wound. And the reason why I stayed angry was for as long as I did is because I believed that if I was angry, I would be able to protect myself from that ever happening again. And I just hated this person. I hated them. And I eventually forgave them because I realized that, like, the victimhood of the event was poisoning me. It was not stopping anything. It wasn't helping anything. It wasn't doing anything. And it was a big, long process, but like what I learned from that is it doesn't mean that I wasn't a victim to this thing happening, because I was innocent. And to some degree, I mean, I probably wasn't entirely innocent. I had my part in it, but I was innocent in the sense that I don't believe that should happen. And I don't believe that was okay. And I believe that was a bad thing. Right. But after that happens, you have to decide, I believe, like, am I going to, like, let this define me and destroy me? Or am I going to, like, make something out of this and be like, okay, what did I learn? How am I going to build myself? I'm going to be better. What can I take from this event? Because once the victimization is over, that is over. And now you only live in the victimization as long as you keep it real in your existence. And so, I want to clarify, like, we go through pain, man. Like, we do have wounds, and they are very real. And the things that hurt us, I'm not saying that they shouldn't hurt. In fact, I'm saying, it's probably even more advantageous for you to feel the full hurt of what they are. But I don't want you to have to live with it, because I lived with that anger for far too long. And it took so much from me, and it took so much from my life, and it took so much from the relationships I had. And maybe it was necessary for my evolution and my growth ultimately, but, like, I wouldn't do it that way again, given the chance. Maybe I had to do it that way at that time, but I wouldn't do it that way again. And so that's the best you can do, right? You can be better in your new self, in your new version of going through life. And, that event, as horrible as it is that I experienced, has also helped me help a lot of other people. So in a weird way, it's a gift. And that sounds very kind of odd and backwards to say, but that is the champion mindset, where you just look at everything as ultimately a gift. It all gave you something. It didn't take away from you. It actually, it gave you something, and you might not even recognize what that is. And you might have literally lost something, but it also gave you something. And what it gave you, I really do think it was more than what it took. Or it was equal to it and it was more valuable than what it took. One last thing. Pruning. To make a tree or a plant grow, actually a pruning can be very helpful. And my friend pointed this out to me. He's like, you don't think the pruning hurts the tree? The tree bleeds the sap. You don't think that sucks for the tree, but it actually makes the tree stronger. And so there is a part of this life where there is a pruning that I think goes on for us, especially when we're in pursuit of our dreams and our goals and our ambitions. So when you experience your pruning, and that means like friends being lost or relationships being destroyed or whatever might have happened, opportunities being lost, look at that as a part of what's helping you actually grow more into the form of design, as opposed to just being random, and just, so sometimes those things that get cut away from your life, it's actually a gift. You just don't know it because you liked it at the time, but you didn't realize that friendship was maybe toxic to you, but you liked that friend at the time. And you thought, oh, it sucks that they don't want to be my friend anymore or whatever might've happened. But maybe it was really good that they actually did get kind of pruned from your life. I mean, so it's mindset, right? And like, try to see the gift in it. Try to see the gracious wonder of your nature, Yeah.
Which is creative.
Yeah.
Which is a creative force. Let's talk about beer for a second, Brandon, and I think we should wrap this one up.
Yeah.
I'm drinking a brew from good old Red Truck Beer, or Red Truck Brewing. And this is their Cantina Paloma wheat with natural grapefruit and lime. And it's like based on a cocktail.
Oh,
according to the can, the Paloma, which is a tequila-based cocktail, hence the lime and grapefruit, I guess, and it's delicious. It is fantastic stuff. So I have enjoyed it immensely for this conversation.
All right. Well, I don't think I've had this one. Pretty sure I haven't yet, on the podcast at least. This is called 52nd Street Peach Ale, brewed in Alberta. And it's by Brewster's Brewing Company. And it's really, really quite good. I had a bunch of them at the brewery last night. I was watching the game, and they slice like a peach, and they put it in your pint, like a nice size little slice of a peach. And then you have the beer. It tastes like it's got a nice peach flavor. And then you have this nice little cold peach at the end of the beer. It's kind of it was a nice thing. It was actually really nice being at the brewery and having that beer. So I decided I would get it for the podcast and share it with you guys on our talk. It's a good one. I recommend it. Well, man, we got into it.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely got into some interesting stuff.
We got into it. I don't know. Let me wrap up and then I'll let you close, because that's just how I want to do it.
What about how I want to do it?
No, I want to do it. All right. It's my way today. Okay. Well, look, at the end of the day, like, I think that there's more happening than you realize. Your nature is an incredible thing. Even when you totally feel like you're fucking up your life, you're actually, there still could be good things coming out. There still could be some real positives, and you might not realize what they are. Sometimes you're making an impact on other people's lives that is more profound than you realize, and it matters. And it could be simple stuff. Like, it could be just you're walking down the street and you smile at somebody, and that means the world to them. You know what I mean? You don't really know. The level of profound loneliness that I have felt, and I've talked to other people and at least have an idea of how they have felt, man, like sometimes a smile or someone just saying hi or someone noticing you or remembering you, how much that can matter sometimes is monumental. And to you, it meant nothing because you were in a good place and you were fine and you didn't even think twice about it. But it might have saved that person's life. You don't even know. And the fact that you may have saved their life might have caused them to go on and do some wonderful things, which means that you played a part in that. And you just don't know. So you are very important in this whole experience. And I don't think you should put pressure on yourself about that. I don't think you should make this like, oh my God, everything I do is so important and I got to be super precious about it. But just know that you matter and things matter and they can matter. And I think it's in your benefit to recognize that and connect with it because you begin to see that maybe there's more to this than what you're focused on and where your attention's at. And at the same time, for your own well-being and your own day-to-day life, put your attention on stuff you care about. Put your attention on stuff you're interested in, that you're curious about, that you're passionate about. That's really the best you can do, And if you find that you're putting your interest and your attention towards these things, and maybe it's causing some bad things in the world, stop doing it, correct, sort it out, figure it out, clean up a mess if you made a mess, and then move on. And you can only do the best you can do, and you're working with what you were given, and you were given the parents you were given and the teachers you were given and the culture you were given. And maybe they didn't serve you perfect and set you up just right, but you are an evolving organism that can work that out, and you will begin to figure out the world that you want to create and live in for yourself and for others. And, build in a sense, build your heaven, whatever that means for you, build your bliss, build your experience of joy and wonder to live this life, and recognize that, it's in you. It's already in you. It's just a matter of if you want to bring it out or not. And you don't have to. That is the other thing. And this is the last thing I'm going to say. You do not have to. But if you want to, if you feel called to, by all means do it. I'd love to see it. And I'm sure we all would.
Wonderful final words, Brandon. The great expanse of your nature. What do I want to say about this for closing thoughts, Brandon? I think that as you were saying, there is this thing inside you. There is this nature that is inside you that is as real as the trees reaching up to the sun, that is as real as the bees buzzing around, that is as real as any of these things that just kind of just do what they do. They don't question what they're doing. They just are, and they create and they create to a kind of perfection that is really quite awe-inspiring. Just why it's so important to get out into nature. And don't forget that same nature exists within you. You have a nature within you that wants to create. Do the flowers bloom because it brings people joy? Maybe. I know that it brings people a lot of joy. It also does a whole lot of other things. You do the things that you do because maybe it's your joy. Maybe there's some spark of something in what you do, what you feel called to do, in what you're following. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that is absolutely enough. It doesn't have to serve some sort of purpose that you go around holding in your hand, waving it around for everybody to know. Maybe it's inherent to itself, and we don't need to worry so much about what that thing is. When you follow your nature, when you follow your bliss, which we could maybe say are the same thing, incredible things happen for everybody, for yourself, for others around you. There's just those ripples of beauty that go out everywhere.
Thank you for listening in on our conversation today. We hope you found something helpful that you can carry forward with you. Head over to our website, wayoftheartist.com, for more free exclusive material and learn about the show. If you haven't already, please support us by subscribing to the show, sharing it with people you know, and keeping compassionate, creative conversation going.